You know what's funny about being humanity's greatest hope against an advanced alien empire? The parking. No, seriously. Here I am, Sarah Chen, 19 years old, and supposedly the most talented pilot Earth has ever produced. And I still have to park my beat-up hover scooter 3 blocks away from the Terran Space Academy because all the good spots are taken by our esteemed alien allies. And they're crystalline ships that look like someone bedazzled a space whale. Cadet Chen, the resonating voice of Commander Wyke's Thor, bounces off the Academy's titanium walls as I sprint through the corridor, my boots squeaking against the polished floor. Late again, I see. Perhaps humans require additional chronological training to understand the concept of time. I skid to a halt and snap a salute that's about as crisp as week-old lettuce. Sorry, Commander. Had to help an old lady cross the quantum bridge. You know how those interdimensional crosswalks can be. The Zar'kathi commander's secondary eyes twitch, always a good sign I've hit a nerve. His primary ones remain fixed on me with that particular blend of disdain and confusion that alien instructors seem to have patented. Your species' reliance on humor as a defense mechanism continues to baffle me, he chitters, mandibles clicking in disapproval, especially given your current situation. Or have you forgotten that the Zar'kathi Empire has conquered 17 systems in the past solar rotation? How could I forget? It's only plastered on every holoscreen from here to Alpha Centauri. The Zar'kathi Empire spreading their special brand of peace and unity across the galaxy, one subjugated civilization at a time. Humanity's only saving grace so far has been our reputation for being, well, completely unpredictable nutjobs who might just be crazy enough to blow up our own planet rather than surrender it. That and the fact that we make really good coffee. You'd be surprised how far a decent cappuccino can get you in galactic politics. No, sir. Haven't forgotten, I reply, straightening my cadet uniform. Just figured being the youngest pilot ever accepted into the advanced combat program might earn me a little slack. Ah, yes, your unprecedented acceptance. He practically spits the word unprecedented like it's a particularly nasty bit of space debris. A decision I still question. Your simulator scores may be impressive, Cadet Chen, but real space combat requires discipline, precision, and adherence to established tactical doctrine, not your human tendency to, as you say, wing it. I bite back another quip. Behind Commander Wyke's Thor, through the Academy's panoramic windows, I can see the glittering fleet of Zar'kathi warships hanging in low orbit. They're here officially as training vessels, part of the cultural exchange program that's supposedly helping humanity prepare for joining the wider galactic community. Unofficially, they're a reminder, a very big, very armed reminder of what happens to species that don't play nice with the Empire. The other cadets file past us into the simulator room, a mix of humans and various alien species from worlds that have already benefited from Zar'kathi guidance. Most of them avoid eye contact. Can't blame them. Being singled out by Commander Wyke's Thor is about as pleasant as a solar flare to the face. Get to your station, Cadet, he finally dismisses me. Today's exercise will simulate the Battle of Proxima VII. Try to last longer than 30 seconds this time. I salute again and head into the simulator room, muttering under my breath, yeah, because following standard doctrine worked out so well for Proxima VI. The truth is, every single world that's tried to fight the Zar'kathi using conventional tactics has lost. Maybe it's time for something a little less conventional. As I climb into my simulator pod, I catch my reflection in the polished canopy. Young face, determined eyes, and that slight smirk that drives the instructors crazy. Mom always said my attitude would either get me killed or make me famous. Here's the thing about simulator training technically. There's no rule that says you can't hack the system to practice after hours. There's also no rule explicitly stating you can't upload the flight patterns from your favorite space combat video games. I mean, if they wanted to prevent that, they probably should have used better encryption than something a bored teenager with too much caffeine could crack in one night. Executing Combat Maneuver Delta 7, the simulator's AI announced in its pristine Zar'kathi accent as I yanked the controls hard to port, completely ignoring its suggestion. Instead, I pulled off what I like to call the inverted space drift, a particularly nasty little trick I learned from spending way too many hours playing Stellar Combat VI Revenge of the Void Pirates. The simulation threatened to redline as my fighter spun in ways that would probably turn a real pilot's organs into soup. Unorthodox maneuver detected. Correction advised, the AI chided. Yeah. Tell it to someone who hasn't beaten your high score 17 times, I muttered, fingers dancing across the neural interface controls. The holographic display lit up with targeting solutions that would make my instructors have an aneurysm. That's when the simulator suddenly shut down. Impressive, a new voice said, deep, resonant, and definitely not the AI's, though completely impractical in actual combat. I popped the simulator's canopy to find myself face to face with possibly the last person I wanted to see, Kr'thax, the legendary Zar'kathi ace pilot. His chitinous armor gleamed under the simulator room's lights, decorated with more campaign markers than most entire squadrons earned in their careers. Let me guess, I said, climbing out of the pod. You're here to tell me how I'm dishonoring the noble art of space combat. Kr'thax's mandibles twitched in what might have been amusement. On the contrary, I'm here because you've caught the Empire's attention, Sarah Chen. Your methods are unorthodox, but your results are undeniable. Wait, you're not mad about the whole hacking the simulator thing? The Zar'kathi became the greatest military force in the galaxy by learning from our opponents, he said, moving to the simulator's control panel with fluid grace. Even if those opponents insist on treating space combat like a game. He activated a holographic display, showing recordings of my previous training sessions. Your species has a unique approach, where we see precise calculations and optimal solutions, you see. Opportunities for chaos. We like to think outside the box, I shrugged, especially when the box is trying to blow us up. Indeed, Kr'thax's secondary eyes narrowed, which is why I'll be overseeing your final trials personally. The room suddenly felt about 10 degrees colder. Kr'thax wasn't just any ace, he was the ace, the pilot who led the campaign that conquered the Centauri worlds, the living legend who had never lost a dogfight in 4 decades of service. The final trials aren't for another 2 weeks, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. They've been moved up. Tomorrow his mandibles clicked in what was definitely amusement now. Consider it a compliment. The Empire believes you're ready for a real challenge. As he turned to leave, he paused at the door. Oh, and Cadet Chen? I've updated the simulator's security protocols. Do try to find a more productive use of your evening than hacking them again. I waited until he was gone before slumping against the simulator pod. Well, that's just great. No pressure or anything. The next 12 hours became a blur of preparation. While the other cadets slept, I reviewed every scrap of combat footage I could find of Kr'thax's battles. The problem was, there wasn't much to study. Most of his opponents didn't survive long enough to record anything useful. What I did notice, though, was a pattern. The Zar'kathi, for all their advanced technology and tactical brilliance, were predictable. They had optimal solutions for every scenario, perfect responses to every situation. Which meant they weren't ready for someone who deliberately chose the worst possible tactical options. Dawn found me still in the simulator room, surrounded by empty energy drink cans and holographic battle projections. I'd given up trying to hack the new security protocols. Kr'thax's upgrades were way beyond my skills. Instead, I'd been running scenarios the old-fashioned way, dying over and over again while trying to find a weakness in the Zar'kathi combat doctrine. You should be resting, Commander Yix. Thor's voice startled me out of my focus. He stood in the doorway, looking at my makeshift command center with what might have been concern. The trials begin in 3 hours. Can't rest, I said, suppressing a yawn. Too busy trying to figure out how to not get vaped by the galaxy's greatest pilot. You know, he said, mandibles working thoughtfully. In all my years teaching at this academy, I've never understood why humans insist on attempting the impossible. It's not logical. I grinned, probably looking slightly manic from the caffeine overdose. That's exactly why we do it, Commander. Because once you've done the impossible once or twice, people stop telling you what you can't do. He made that chittering sound that passed for a Zar'kathi sigh. Very well. But know this, Cadet Chen. Kr'thax requested this trial personally. He believes you represent a potential threat to the Empire. Me? I'm just a kid with too many gaming hours and a problem with authority. Perhaps Thor turned to leave. Or perhaps you are something we haven't seen before. Either way, I suspect tomorrow will be interesting. As the door closed behind him, I looked back at the holographic display showing Kr'thax's perfect combat record. 87 consecutive victories, no defeats. Well, I muttered, pulling up one last simulation. Time to make it 87, and one. The graduation ceremony was everything you'd expect from a Zar'kathi event, formal, rigid, and about as exciting as watching paint dry in zero gravity. I stood at attention with the other cadets while various dignitaries droned on about honor, duty, and the generous benevolence of the Empire. Behind them, the massive view screen showed the Zar'kathi training fleet in formation above Earth, a reminder of their protective presence. That's when all hell broke loose. The first sign something was wrong was when the fleet's formation changed. Not the careful, precise movements we'd seen during training, but a rapid combat deployment. Then the view screen flickered, showing new ships dropping out of hyperspace, sleek, predatory vessels that definitely weren't Zar'kathi. Pirates, the announcement cut through the chaos. The Crimson Void fleet has breached the defense perimeter. I couldn't help but laugh. The Crimson Void, the galaxy's most notorious pirate fleet, showing up right in the middle of my final trial. Either this was the worst coincidence in history, or someone had a really twisted sense of timing. All cadets to shelter positions, Commander Thor's voice boomed over the comms. This is not a drill. Yeah, right. Like I was going to sit this one out. I was already running for the hangar before the first explosion rocked the academy. Behind me, I heard Kr'thax shouting something about unauthorized launches, but I had more important things to worry about, like the fact that Earth's orbital defense grid was being systematically dismantled by what looked like a very advanced AI targeting system. Cadet Chen, return to the shelter immediately. Thor's voice crackled in my helmet as I climbed into the nearest fighter. This is a real combat situation. Exactly, I replied, firing up the engines. And correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you say I needed real combat experience? The hangar doors were already closing when I punched it. I had about 3 seconds to either pull off a perfect emergency launch or become a very expensive smear on the blast doors. Good thing I'd practiced this exact scenario in space, Ace underground racing about 1,000 times. I rolled the fighter sideways, scraping through the narrowing gap with centimeters to spare. Above me, the battle was already in full swing, and it wasn't going well for our side. The Crimson Void ships moved with impossible precision, their formations shifting and adapting faster than any organic pilot could manage. One by one, I watched veteran Zar'kathi pilots, the best of the best, get picked apart by the pirates' combat AI. This is Kr'thax, a familiar voice cut through the comm chatter. All units, maintain formation Delta 9. Do not deviate from. His transmission cut off as 3 pirate fighters bracketed his position with plasma fire. Even the legendary Ace was struggling against whatever they were using. That's when I noticed something familiar about the pirates' attack patterns. They were perfect, too perfect. Just like the simulator's AI, they always chose the optimal solution, the mathematically correct move. A grin spread across my face as I yanked my fighter into a spin that would probably get me failed in any normal test. Hey, Commander Thor, remember how you said my gaming techniques would get me killed in real combat? Cadet Chen, this is not the time for. Well, guess what? These pirates are using an advanced combat AI, right? And what's the one thing AIs can't handle? I didn't wait for an answer as I dove straight into the heart of the enemy formation. Humans being completely illogical. I kicked in the afterburners and pulled off the dumbest, most ridiculous moves I could think of. The triple corkscrew drift from Stellar Racers 3, the quantum bounce from Neptune's Revenge, every banned competition move and physics-defying trick I'd ever learned from years of gaming. And it worked. The pirate AI couldn't predict what I was doing because no sane pilot would ever attempt these maneuvers. Their perfect formations began to break apart as they tried to adapt to my chaos. Impossible, Kr'thax's voice crackled through the comms. Their targeting systems should be. Let me guess, I cut in, barrel rolling between two pirate ships and causing them to crash into each other. They should be unbeatable because they calculate every possible move? Yeah, that's the problem. They calculate every possible move. They don't expect impossible ones. I could practically hear Kr'thax's mandibles clicking in frustration. This is not proper combat doctrine. Nope, I agreed cheerfully, using a move I'd literally invented while half asleep playing Star Pioneer VR in my dorm room. This is human combat doctrine. We call it winging it and hoping we don't explode. The pirates' perfect formation was completely shattered now. Their AI couldn't maintain tactical coherence when faced with moves that defied its fundamental programming. One by one, the veteran pilots began to catch on, abandoning their training in favor of increasingly unconventional tactics. As I lined up another impossible shot, I couldn't help but broadcast to the entire fleet, "Hey, who says video games never taught anyone anything useful?" That's when my fighter systems suddenly went dark. All of them. Every single display, every control, every backup system. You know what's worse than having all your systems fail in the middle of a space battle? Having them fail right after you've been bragging about your amazing pilot skills. Talk about timing. Systems rebooting my fighter's AI announced with infuriating calm. Estimated time to restoration 2 minutes. "We don't have 2 minutes," I shouted, yanking uselessly at the controls as my fighter drifted. Through the cockpit window, I could see 3 pirate ships turning toward me, their weapons charging. Come on, think. What would Captain Reynolds do? Then it hit me. If the AI had adapted to predict my unpredictable moves, maybe it was time to be predictable in the most unpredictable way possible. You follow that logic? No? Good, that's exactly what I was counting on. Cadet Chen Kr'thax's voice crackled through the emergency comm channel. "Eject immediately. Your fighter is defenseless." Not defenseless, I grinned, reaching under the control panel. Just differently abled. Ever hear of manual mode? There was a moment of stunned silence on the comms. Manual mode, the backup system that let you fly without any computer assistance. It was like trying to juggle while riding a unicycle blindfolded. In space. No sane pilot would ever use it in combat. Perfect. I yanked the manual mode lever hard. The fighter shuddered as every automated system shut down. No targeting computer, no stability control, no safety protocols. Just me, basic thrusters, and whatever physics I could remember from high school. "Chen, what are you doing?" Kr'thax demanded as I started moving again, my ship wobbling like a drunk penguin. "Something really stupid," I replied cheerfully. "Also, you might want to watch this. It's going to be either really impressive or really embarrassing." The pirate ships opened fire, their AI predicting where a damaged fighter should logically drift. But I wasn't drifting logically anymore. I was flying like every bad sci-fi movie pilot rolled into one, pulling maneuvers that would make physics professors cry. Remember that scene from Galaxy Quest where they scrape against the space dock I broadcast, as I deliberately bounced my fighter off a piece of debris? Always wanted to try that. The pirate AI was going haywire trying to track me. Its perfect predictions were useless against a pilot who was basically button mashing in real life. I spun my fighter in ways that would probably get me court-martialed if anyone was recording this. "This is not flying," Kr'thax shouted. This is. Falling with style, I suggested, quoting another Earth classic as I used the momentum from a collision to slingshot around a disabled ship. "Come on, Kr'thax, join the fun. Bet you've always wanted to throw away that tactical manual." To my absolute shock, he did. The legendary Ace's fighter suddenly broke formation, executing a move that looked like a cross between a ballet spin and a washing machine malfunction. "I cannot believe I am doing this," he grumbled over the comms. That's the spirit, I cheered, using a move I'd literally learned from playing Space Janitor Simulator in my free time. "Hey, want to see what happens when you try the Rainbow Road shortcut in real space?" The "what?" Kr'thax's question was cut short as I killed my engines, let momentum carry me through a literal somersault between 2 pirate ships, then fired my thrusters in reverse. The maneuver was absolutely insane, totally impractical, and worked perfectly because no targeting computer would ever expect it. The pirate ships, trying to predict my trajectory, crashed into each other. Did you just Kr'thax's voice was a mixture of horror and reluctant admiration. Did you just use a racing game exploit in actual combat? If it works in Mario Kart, it works in space, I declared, already lining up my next impossibly stupid move. Also, fun fact, you can drift in zero gravity if you time it just right. The battle had devolved into complete chaos. Other pilots, seeing our success, started abandoning traditional tactics. The space around Earth became a circus of fighters pulling moves that would make any flight instructor have a heart attack. Barrel roll, someone shouted over the comms. That's not a barrel roll, I corrected, demonstrating the proper technique. That's an aileron roll. Here, let me show you, just like in Star Fox. The pirate AI was completely overwhelmed. It couldn't adapt to tactics that ignored basic physics, combat logic, and common sense. One by one, the pirate ships either crashed or retreated, their perfect formation shattered by sheer human absurdity. This is unprecedented, Kr'thax muttered as we regrouped. Never in my career have I seen such awesome moves. I was going to say blatant disregard for every principle of space combat. Same thing, I laughed, then noticed my radar picking up something big. Really big. Speaking of unprecedented, the pirate flagship had just emerged from hyperspace. It was massive, bristling with weapons, and its AI core was probably powerful enough to calculate the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. Well, I broadcast to the fleet, anyone up for the boss battle? The pirate flagship loomed before us like a spacefaring mountain, its weapons array lighting up like a deranged Christmas tree. This wasn't just any AI we were facing, this was probably the most advanced combat system in the galaxy. All units, maintain tactical formation, Kr'thax ordered, his voice steady despite the situation. We must. Or I cut in. We could try something completely ridiculous. There was a moment of silence on the comms before Kr'thax responded. What exactly are you proposing, Cadet Chen? Ever heard of the Leroy Jenkins strategy? The confusion in his voice was palpable. The what? Just. Follow my lead. And maybe record this, because no one's going to believe it otherwise. Before anyone could stop me, I gunned my engines to maximum and flew straight at the flagship. Not in an attack run, but in the most erratic zigzag pattern possible while blasting Earth's classic rock through all communication channels. Are you playing music during combat? Kr'thax demanded, even as he followed my lead. Queens, don't stop me now, I confirmed. Trust me, it helps. The flagship's AI went into overdrive trying to predict our approach vector. But how do you predict something that doesn't make any sense? We weren't flying in formation, we were basically having a dance party in space. Now, I shouted, cutting my engines completely. Everyone pick a different direction. The dumber the better. The space around the flagship erupted into chaos as fighters scattered in every possible direction, each pilot pulling their own bizarre maneuvers. The AI couldn't track us all, not when we were all doing something different and equally illogical. This is madness, Kr'thax muttered, even as he executed a perfect corkscrew that ended in what I could only describe as a space cartwheel. Madness, I grinned, lining up my shot. This is humanity. The flagship's weapons were firing everywhere, trying to establish some pattern in our movements. But there was no pattern. We were 40 pilots doing 40 completely different, equally insane things. The AI is overloading, someone reported. It can't process this many unpredictable variables. Then let's give it one more. I switched to a private channel with Kr'thax. Hey, want to help me try something that's either going to be really epic or get us both killed? There was a pause before he responded. At this point, Cadet Chen, I find myself morbidly curious. What followed was probably the first ever synchronized space ballet performed by a human cadet and a Zar'kathi ace pilot. We spiraled around each other, using our combined momentum to slingshot straight at the flagship's bridge. The AI, faced with two ships moving in perfect harmony while also defying every law of physics and combat doctrine, finally gave up, its targeting systems locked up, trying to calculate the incalculable. Now this Kr'thax said as we pulled away from the disabled flagship, this is what we feared about humanity. Our amazing pilot skills. Your absolute refusal to be predictable. Even when working together, you managed to be chaotic. I watched as the remaining pirate ships retreated, their mighty AI defeated by what essentially amounted to a group of pilots deciding to ignore reality in favor of video game logic. You know what the best part is, I asked, unable to keep the smugness out of my voice. I hesitate to ask. This whole thing? It technically counts as my final trial. Kr'thax's laughter, the first I'd ever heard from him, echoed through the comms. Indeed it does, Pilot Chen. Indeed it does. The pirate flagship loomed before us like a space-faring mountain, its weapons array lighting up like a deranged Christmas tree. This wasn't just any AI we were facing, this was probably the most advanced combat system in the galaxy. All units, maintain tactical formation, Kr'thax ordered, his voice steady despite the situation. We must. Or I cut in, we could try something completely ridiculous. There was a moment of silence on the comms before Kr'thax responded. What exactly are you proposing, Cadet Chen? Ever heard of the Leroy Jenkins strategy? The confusion in his voice was palpable. The what? Just follow my lead, and maybe record this, because no one's going to believe it otherwise. Before anyone could stop me, I gunned my engines to maximum and flew straight at the flagship. Not in an attack run, but in the most erratic zigzag pattern possible, while blasting Earth's classic rock through all communication channels. Are you playing music during combat? Kr'thax demanded, even as he followed my lead. Queens, don't stop me now, I confirmed. Trust me, it helps. The flagship's AI went into overdrive trying to predict our approach vector. But how do you predict something that doesn't make any sense? We weren't flying in formation, we were basically having a dance party in space. Now, I shouted, cutting my engines completely. Everyone pick a different direction. The dumber the better. The space around the flagship erupted into chaos as fighters scattered in every possible direction, each pilot pulling their own bizarre maneuvers. The AI couldn't track us all, not when we were all doing something different and equally illogical. This is madness, Kr'thax muttered, even as he executed a perfect corkscrew that ended in what I could only describe as a space cartwheel. Madness, I grinned, lining up my shot. This is humanity. The flagship's weapons were firing everywhere, trying to establish some pattern in our movements. But there was no pattern. We were 40 pilots doing 40 completely different, equally insane things. The AI is overloading, someone reported. It can't process this many unpredictable variables. Then let's give it one more. I switched to a private channel with Kr'thax. Hey, want to help me try something that's either going to be really epic or get us both killed? There was a pause before he responded. At this point, Cadet Chen, I find myself morbidly curious. What followed was probably the first ever synchronized space ballet performed by a human cadet and a Zar'kathi ace pilot. We spiraled around each other, using our combined momentum to slingshot straight at the flagship's bridge. The AI, faced with two ships moving in perfect harmony while also defying every law of physics and combat doctrine, finally gave up, its targeting systems locked up, trying to calculate the incalculable. Now this Kr'thax said as we pulled away from the disabled flagship, this is what we feared about humanity. Our amazing pilot skills. Your absolute refusal to be predictable. Even when working together, you managed to be chaotic. I watched as the remaining pirate ships retreated, their mighty AI defeated by what essentially amounted to a group of pilots deciding to ignore reality in favor of video game logic. You know what the best part is, I asked, unable to keep the smugness out of my voice. I hesitate to ask. This whole thing? It technically counts as my final trial. Kr'thax's laughter, the first I'd ever heard from him, echoed through the comms. Indeed it does, Pilot Chen. Indeed it does.